Happy Tuesday morning, everybody. As of now, you should be caught up with your reading through chapter 7. So this starts the way I've grouped it, like another set of chapters. So we are going to be reading in the next set of chapters, chapters 8 and 9. So here's what I want to explain to you. So we talked about before doing the vocabulary and the discussion questions, and some of you have done it and some of you haven't. And I know last week was kind of confusing. So, sorry, my dog, hold on. Good morning, everyone, and greetings from Teddy and I. If you hear a dog barking in the background, it's him. We are going to be starting a new set of chapters today. As you noticed in the past work, I've grouped together chapters. So the grouping this for the next couple of days is going to be chapters 8 and 9. So that being said, if you have not done any of the discussion questions or the vocab work for the past sets of chapters, that's okay. Everybody's home situations were different, but I do want you to start doing it if you haven't already. It's working out to be about maybe 45 minutes a day of work, or maybe up to an hour. If you want to go a little deeper with it, that's fine too. But I think at this point, reading and writing is the best thing you can do for yourself. And I'd like you to start in on it if you haven't already. So that being said, I like to do the vocabulary in advance before we read the words, and that will help you understand them when we get to them in the reading. So that's really the point of it. So I have put underneath a list of sentences in which the vocab appears in the story. I am not going to look at that or give feedback on that. This is kind of a self-assessment of, do you know what the words mean? So you can print that out, you can look at them, you can jot them on a piece of paper, as we've done in the past. What words can you substitute into those sentences where it still makes sense? Okay, so once you do that and you look at those words and you make an educated guess based on the context clues in the sentence and your own prior knowledge, any that you really feel like, I really guessed on this, I don't know, you should look up in a dictionary. Jot down what they actually mean. At that point, once you've done that, you should go into Schoology and take the matching for that vocab and see how you do. That is what I will look at. That's what I've inputted in terms of helping guide you to how are you doing learning these words. Okay? So that's in Schoology. So don't try to get access to edit the document that I'm giving you underneath with the vocab words. Don't submit those to me. That's just for you to say, do I know these words? And then to look them up. What I will look at and what I will give feedback on is the matching in Schoology for those same vocabulary words after you've come up with the definitions and tried to figure them out on your own. Okay. So play that again if you're still unsure. Ask a friend. Some of the questions that you're sending, I'm totally fine answering them, but they're answered in these videos. So maybe listen a little more carefully, rewind it, listen again. So pause me, go ahead and work on that vocab, and then let's meet back here and we'll read chapter 8 together. Okay? See you in a bit. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. And now we're ready to jump into chapter 8. Again, the questions are the discussion questions that are posted below in Google Classroom in a Google Doc are just for your reference. Please don't answer the questions in Google Classroom. If you want to submit them to me for me to look at and assess, you need to do that in Schoology. It's just a better platform for doing this. I can kind of give feedback on a bunch of questions at once instead of each individual 70 kids going in. So have them out in front of you. You can jot down a couple of notes in your notebook. That's why I put them there. And we can then go into Google Classroom and work on them. Don't submit the discussion questions until they're all done. So you couldn't submit anything today. You can open it in Schoology and still work on it. Like we've done all year, you back out and it says, your stuff might not be saved, but it pretty much always saves. So, I mean, I've never had it not save. Let's put it that way. Pretty much wasn't a very comforting wording. I've never had it not save. So you can go ahead and do that if you want to do it a little bit every day, or you can do it all tomorrow, whatever you choose. Okay, so let's read chapter 8 together. Pause and get my readers. Okay, here we go. Chapter 8. The day hunting season opened, I was as nervous as Sammy, our house cat. Part of that seemingly endless day was spent getting things ready for the coming night. I cleaned my lantern and filled it full of oil. With hog lard, I greased my boots until they were as soft as a hummingbird's nest. I was grinding my axe when Papa came around. He smiled as he said, "This is the big night, isn't it?" "Sure is, Papa," I said, "and I've waited a long time for it." "Yes, I know," he said. "I've been thinking there's not too much to do around here during the hunting season. I'm pretty sure I can take care of things, so you just go ahead and hunt all you want to." "Thanks, Papa," I said. "I guess I'll be out pretty late at night, and I'll probably have to do a lot of sleeping in the daytime." So clearly, raccoons are nocturnal, and this is when hunting takes place. Papa started frowning. He said, "your mother doesn't like this hunting of yours very much. She's worried about you being out all by yourself. Can you blame her?" "I can't see why Mama has to worry," I said. "Haven't I been roaming the woods ever since I was big enough to walk? And I'm almost 14 now." "I know," said Papa. "It's all right with me, but women are a little different than men. They worry more. Now, just to be on the safe side, I think it would be a good idea for you to tell us where you're hunting. Then if anything happens, we'll know where to look." I told him I would, but I didn't think anything was going to happen. After Papa had left, I started thinking, he doesn't even talk to me like I was a boy anymore. He talks to me like I was a man. These wonderful thoughts made me feel just about as big as our old red mule. I had good talks with my dogs. "I've waited almost 3 years for this night," I said, "and it hasn't been easy. I've taught you everything I know, and I want you to do your best." Little Ann acted like she understood. She whined and saved me a wash job on my face. Old Dan may have, but he didn't act like it. He just lay there in the sunshine all stretched out and limber as a rag. So limber means like able to bend, like you're really kind of flexible. So he's just lounging in the sun. During supper, Mama asked me where I was going to hunt. "I'm not going far," I said, "just down the river." I could tell Mama was worried, and it didn't make me feel too good. "Billy," she said, "I don't approve of this hunting, but it looks like I can't say no, not after all you've been through getting your dogs and all that training." "Ah, he'll be all right," Papa said. "Besides, he's getting to be a good-sized man now." "Man!" Mama exclaimed. "Why, he's still just a little boy." "You can't keep him a little boy always," Papa said. "He's got to grow up someday." "I know," Mama said, "but I don't like it, not at all, and I can't help worrying." "Mama, please don't worry about me," I said. "I'll be all right. Why, I've been all over these hills. You know that." "I know," she said, "but that was in the daytime. I never worried too much when it was daylight, but at night that's different. It'll be dark and anything could happen." "There won't be anything happen. There won't be anything happen," I said. "I promise. I'll be careful." Mama got up from the table saying, "Well, it's like I said. I can't say no and I can't help worrying. I'll pray every night you're out." The way Mama had me feeling, I didn't know whether to go hunting or not. Papa must have sensed how I felt. "It's dark now," he said, "and I understand those coons are stirring pretty early. You better be going, hadn't you?" While Mama was bundling me up, Papa lit my lantern. He handed it to me, saying, "I'd like to see a big coon skin on the smokehouse wall in the morning." The whole family followed me out on the porch. There, we all got a surprise. My dogs were sitting on the steps, waiting for me. The whole family followed me out on the porch. There, we all got a surprise. My dogs were sitting on the steps, waiting for me. Sorry. I heard Papa laugh. "Why, they know you're going hunting," he said. "Know it as well as anything." "Well, I never," said Mama. "Do you really think they do? It does look like they do. Why, just look at them." Little Ann started wriggling and twisting. Old Dan trotted out to the gate, stopped, turned around, and looked at me. "Sure they know Billy's going hunting," piped the little one. "And I know why." "How do you know so much, silly?" asked the oldest one. "Because I told little Ann, that's why," she said. "And she told old Dan. That's how they know." We all had to laugh at her. The last thing I heard as I left the house was the voice of my mother. "Be careful, Billy," she said, "and don't stay out late." It was a beautiful night, still and frosty. A big grinning Ozark moon had the countryside bathed in a soft yellow glow. The starlit heaven reminded me of a large blue umbrella, outspread and with the handle broken off. Just before I reached the timber, I called my dogs to me. Now the trail will be a little different tonight, I whispered. It won't be a hide dragged on the ground. It'll be the real thing. So remember everything I taught you. And I'm depending on you. Just put one up in a tree and I'll do the rest. I turned them loose, saying, "Go get 'em." They streaked for the timber. By the time I had reached the river, every nerve in my body was drawn up as tight as a fiddle string. Big-eyed and with ears open, I walked on, stopping now and then to listen. The way I was slipping along, anyone would have thought I was trying to slip up on a coon myself. I'd never seen a night so peaceful and still. All around me, tall sycamores gleamed like white streamers in the moonlight. A prowling skunk came wobbling up on the riverbank. He stopped when he saw me. I smiled at the foxfire glow of his small, beady red eyes. He turned and disappeared in the underbrush. I heard a sharp snap and a feathery rustle in some brush close by. A small rodent started squealing in agony. A nighthawk had found his supper. You ever see a hawk fly by with something in its paws? It happens a lot around here. I've seen just this week hawks flying by with mice or a fish sometimes flapping away. I mean, it's how they eat and everything, but you can't help feeling bad for the little thing in its claws. Across the river and far back in the rugged mountains, I heard the baying of a hound. I wondered if it was the same one I had heard from my window on those nights so long ago. Although my eyes were seeing the wonders of the night, my ears were ever alert, listening for the sound of my hounds telling me they had found a trail. I was expecting one of them to bawl, but when it came, it startled me. The deep tone of old Dan's voice jarred the silence around me. I dropped my axe and almost dropped my lantern. A strange feeling came over me. I took a deep breath and threw back my head to give the call of the hunter, but something went wrong. My throat felt like it had been tied in a knot. I swallowed a couple of times and the knot disappeared. As loud as I could, I whooped, "Woo-wee! Get him, Dan! Get him!" Little Ann came in. The bell-like tones of her voice made shivers run up and down my spine. I whooped to her, "Woo-wee! Tell it to him, little girl! Tell it to him!" This was what I had prayed for, worked and sweated for. My own little hounds bawling on the trail of a river coon. I don't know why I cried, but I did. While the tears rolled, I whooped again and again. They straightened the trail out and headed down the river. I took after them as fast as I could. A mile downstream, the coon pulled his first trick. I could tell by my dogs' voices that they had lost the trail. When I came to them, they were out on an old drift, sniffing around. The coon had pulled a simple trick. He had run out on the drift, leaped into the water, and crossed the river. To an experienced coonhound, the crude trick would have been nothing at all, but my dogs were just big awkward pups trailing their first live coon. I stood and watched, wondering if they would remember the training I had given them. Now and then I would whoop, urging them on. Old Dan was having a fit. He whined and he bawled, he whimpered and cried. He came to me and reared up, begging for help. "I'm not going to help you," I scolded, "and you're not going to find him out on the drift. If you would just remember some of the training I gave you, you could find the trail. Now go find that coon." He ran back out on the drift and started searching. Little Ann came to me. I could see the pleading in her warm gray eyes. "I'm ashamed of you, little girl," I said. "I thought you had more sense than this. If you let him fool you this easily, you'll never be a coon dog." She whined, turned, and trotted downstream to search again for the lost trail. I couldn't understand. Had all the training I'd given them been useless? I knew if I waded the river, they would follow me. Once on the other side, it would be easy for them to find the trail. I didn't want it that way. I wanted them to figure it out by themselves. The more I thought about it, the more disgusted I became. I sat down and buried my face in my arms. Out on the drift, old Dan started whining. It made me angry, and I got up to scold him again. I couldn't understand his actions. He was running along the edge of the drift, whimpering, staring downriver. I looked that way. I could see something swimming for the opposite shore. At first, I thought it was a muskrat. In the middle of the stream, where the moonlight was the brightest, I got a good look. It was little Ann. With a loud whoop, I told her how proud I was. My little girl had remembered her training. She came out on a gravel bar, shook the water from her body, and disappeared in the thick timber. So little Ann crossed the water to keep hunting the coon. She wasn't tricked by the fact he had gone in the water. Minutes later, she let me know that she had found the trail. Before the tones of her voice had died away, old Dan plowed into the water. He was so eager to join her, I could hear him whining as he swam. As soon as his feet touched the bottom in the shallows, he started bawling and lunging. White sheets of water knocked high in the moonlight by his churning feet gleamed like thousands of tiny white stars. He came out of the river onto a sandbar. In his eagerness, his feet slipped into the loose sand and down he went. He came out of his roll, running and bawling. Ahead of him was a log jam. He sailed over it and disappeared down the riverbank. Seconds later, I heard his deep voice blend with the sharp cries of little Ann. At that moment, no boy in the world could have been more proud of his dogs than I was. Never again would I doubt them. So this is kind of a big moment. He's like, all that training worked. This is everything I've worked for. This is everything I dreamed of. I was hurrying along looking for a shallow riffle so I could wade across when the voices of my dogs stopped. I waited and listened. They opened up again on my side of the stream. The coon had crossed back over. I couldn't help smiling. I knew that never again would a ringtail fool them by swimming the river. The next trick the old fellow pulled was a dandy. He climbed a large water oak standing about 10 feet from the river and simply disappeared. I got there in time to see my dogs swimming for the opposite shore. For half an hour they worked that bank. Not finding the trail, they swam back. I stood and watched them. They practically tore the riverbank to pieces, looking for the trail. Old Dan knew the coon had climbed the water oak. He went back, reared up on it, and bawled a few times. There's no use in doing that, boy, I said. I know he climbed it, but he's not there now. Maybe it's like Grandpa said. He just climbed right on through to the top and disappeared in the stars. My dogs didn't know it, but I was pretty well convinced that that was what the coon had done. They wouldn't give up. Once again they crossed the river to the other shore. It was no use. The coon hadn't touched that bank. They came back. Old Dan went up the river and little Ann worked downstream. An hour and a half later they gave up and came to me begging for help. I knelt down between their wet bodies while I scratched them and petted them. I let them know that I still loved them. I'm not mad, I said. I know you did your best. If that coon can fool both of us, then we're just beat. We'll go somewhere else to hunt. He's not the only coon in these bottoms. Just as I picked up my axe and lantern, little Ann let out a bawl and tore out down the riverbank. Old Dan, with a bewildered look on his face, stood for a moment looking after her. Then raising his head high in the air, he made my eardrums ring with his deep voice. I could hear the underbrush popping as he ran to join her. I couldn't figure out what had taken place. Surely little Ann had heard or seen something. I could tell by their voices that whatever it was they were after, they were close enough to see it, and they were probably running by sight. So let's take a peek at the discussion questions that we've answered so far, or we could answer so far. How did Billy's parents feel about his hunting? So Mama had a very different feeling about it than Papa did. So in your discussion questions, explain that to me. How old was Billy when he went coon hunting for the first time? Play with that one. Look back in the story. You can find your answer. What did Billy realize about the way his father was talking to him? So Billy's father was talking to him in a certain way that made him very proud. Go back in the text just above, and what did he say about how his father was talking about him? How was he treating him? And how did that make him feel? What feeling did Billy get on his first night of hunting when old Dan bawled for the first time? What did he do after he also heard little Ann's bawl? So, how did he feel? And then he does a certain thing. I'm not going to tell you the word. It begins with a W, but it's when he goes, woo-wee. What do they call that? What did he do? Okay. I'm going to pause there because with the vocab and with those 4 discussion questions, I think that's enough for today. So we're going to pick up where we stopped reading chapter 8 tomorrow. Your expectation was the vocab and the matching with the vocab and starting to work on in Schoology these 4 discussion questions, okay? And that's a good amount of work for today. And that will keep you right on track, keep your skills fresh, and I'm unbelievably proud of you. So good job. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll finish reading chapter 8. Take care, guys. Bye now.